Good evening, everyone. Hope all of you are safe and healthy. I, Dr. Vipin Agarwal from School of Business, Oro University, welcome you all. Today's webinar is part of the ongoing Distinguished Lecture Series at Oro University, and it is jointly organized by School of Business, Oro University, and Indus University, Ahmedabad. I would now request Dr. Daisy Kurian, faculty at Institute of Management, Indus University, to introduce the eminent speaker and the other panelists for today's webinar. Daisy, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Vipin Agarwal. On behalf of Oro University and Indus University, I extend a warm welcome to Dr. R. Vaidyanathan. A brief about him. Dr. R. Vaidyanathan is a retired professor of finance, IIM Bangalore. He is 2 times Fulbright Scholar and a fellow of ICSSR, visiting faculty at various universities in USA, UK. He has been selected by Business Today as one of the 10 best professors at all IIMs. He has the rare privilege of being in various committees of regulators like SEBI, RBI, IRDA, and more. He is consultant to many organizations and is on the board of many corporates. Dr. Vaidyanathan has been conferred with the Life Contribution Award by Asia Pacific Risk and Insurance Association and Kaibo Life in 2019. His book, India Unique Role of Non-Corporate Sectors in India, which focuses on Indian Asian value systems, has been well received by planners and policymakers. His other book on black money and tax havens has been acclaimed by experts. His recent book, Caste as Social Capital, has also been well received by the market. He is on the Advisory Council of Vivekananda International Foundation and also Honorary Dean of Economic Studies. He is a member of National Security Advisory Board and the National Security Council and Cho S. Ramaswamy Chair Professor in Public Policy at Shastra University. He is an adjunct professor at Oro University, Surat, and is also a member of Board of Governors of Oro University. I also take the privilege of introducing Dr. Monica Suri, a very versatile personality who will be the moderator of today's session. Dr. Suri is currently working as Head School of Business and Associate Professor in Marketing. She is also the Head of Mentorship Program and Chairperson of Women Development Cell at Oro University. Before I hand over to our moderator, I call upon Dr. Rohit Singh, Dean Oro University, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. On behalf of Oro University, I would like to welcome you, sir, on this first webinar in the School of Business on the Distinguished Lecture Series. And on behalf of the university, I extend my warm welcome to you and hope you, along with all the participants, are keeping healthy and safe during this time. This COVID-19 came into India precisely in the first week of March. It started tinkling. But there was a notion that in January, the people were talking about some virus which is coming through China and the South Asian nations. And India started preparing for it. But if you see the vastness of this pandemic which is there, not even in 2008 and 9 that economy has been affected by the recession. And then people are comparing this even with the Great Depression of 1930. Question is, ever before this recession and depression, what was happening, it was never happened that full economy has been closed, not for a country or two, but across the world. So it is taking into consideration, it is affecting a humanity in totality, which is affecting their lifestyle, which is affecting the business, which is affecting the economies. And the most important factor is that the common well-being of the citizens of the nation was being taken for granted on the right. This pandemic at least has compelled the government to think upon what it is going to do for the citizens of the nation. People are saying the post-COVID, the recovery will be subject to the recovery of the United Nations economy and the China economy per se. But in the latest reports by the UNTAC suggested that major economies will be exposed to a greater extent where they will be having a lot of damage, but they are relying on 2 economies and both belong to Asia. One is the China, other is the India. As of now, the government of India is focusing on the health, which is causing the main hazard issue in the country. And the health issues, if taken care, they will also take care of the other issues, which is coming as the putting the economy on track, the viability of the businesses which are totally shut down, the livelihoods of people, because there is a question being raised about whether they are being engaged into the job employment or whether their job will go post this COVID, subject to what companies are going to do. Addressing all these issues, we thought this will be the good webinar where we will have you with us and try to find it out what are the possibilities which the nations across the world will deal with this pandemic. The most important and compelling situation which is coming in front of us is the financial vulnerability, which is giving a tension in the economy. And this is basically happening because the growth rate has slowed down. There's a debt increasing onto the corporates who are trying, because the supply side is totally shut. They are not able to produce what they were producing before. And there's a deteriorating credit quality among the business houses and the individuals. And if you see all these things, in all the economic scenarios which has happened in the past, it was always a demand side effect. Supply was never on a concern. This time in this pandemic, both the supply and the demand equally are totally shut, and the companies are not in a position to find it out what they're going to do. I have listed out few corporates, few sectors which are going to be affected by this pandemic. It is apparel and textile, because we are in Surat and we are seeing that across all the major textile houses, they are closed. Auto and automobile components, aviation and tourism, which is badly hit, it is totally at a negligible level. Building and construction, people are saying the rate per square feet will come down post this COVID-19. Chemical and petrochemical, 2 days before we heard that the petrol crude oil goes to even minus. Never in the history it happened that the crude oil has went to minus also. So this is where we have to, consumer retail and internet business. People are arguing that internet business is going to recover because government is allowing them. But technically there is no demand for it also. The worst sector which I have seen is the education and the skill development. In all these recession and the economic, whatever turnover happened, education was never touched. This is the first pandemic where the education system has also been asked to close down and shut. No skill development activity is happening. Then it also went across the financial institutions, basically the banking, the insurance, the non-banking financial corporation, food and agriculture, metals and mining, medium, small and medium enterprises which are being asked to close down till government comes up with some kind of advisory to open the businesses, oil and gas, pharma company. Recently, India is being considered as one of the largest exporters for generic medicine. But the irony is they are dependent upon the raw materials from China. So their export has also hit a massive low because now China is not supplying to it. And recently, government of India put in what you call discrimination on FDI by China per se. And day before yesterday, the China embassy said it is totally arbitrary in nature. It is not fair. It is not just. It is not transparent, which government of India is doing. And it has been suggested that around 390 million tons equipment, medicine in last 21 days is being imported into India. And there are corporations like Alibaba and all those organizations who are helping India to get those equipment. So the question is, considering all these scenarios, where does India and the world economy stand today? What will be the new world order? Question here is being asked whether the nations are what you call standing solid enough on the grounds where they can say they are able to digest to this new world order which is being created. And what is this new order which is coming up? It is happening in terms of the shift which is happening towards the local production and consumption. The biggest shift which has happened. Second one is, though we are saying we are into a cashless economy, but if you ironically see, what is the irony? The biggest irony is the cash economy has gone. There is no parallel economy as such. So we need to think upon whether we can go back to that cash economy or not. Cash need to become the king again in the business. And then in this pandemic, there's a most discussed factor is the cost element among the business houses. And the cost element is the fixed cost component. Question is being asked, can we shift this fixed cost component to the outsourcing firms and bring them into the variable cost components? And then business needs to identify what are the capabilities in terms of sustaining these pandemics and any unforeseen event which they have never predicted. The biggest hit is the supply chain, logistics, and the distribution and the production system in the countries. And last, whether we are creating an organization which is becoming resilient enough to sustain all these challenges. So these are the few issues, sir, I thought I should bring into in front of the audience and you which I hope it will be covered into the discussion during this webinar. I hand over to Dr. Monica Suri. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rohit sir. I think you have beautifully set the pace of the seminar with the deliberations that we are supposed to make. I have just few things quickly to share before I hand over the session to our honorable speaker. As we all know that the COVID pandemic has set foot in India as across the globe and is likely to impact the country's economy across the industries and in various business formats. And you know, whatever disaster comes, that always comes with challenges and opportunities. And we'll find out through this particular webinar that yes, there are challenges which has to be taken care of with proper, extensive measures from the side of ministry, from the side of community, from the side of industry at large. All these aspects will integrate together to deliberate upon it. But I was just thinking that these damages, how to recover these damages is the main concern at this point in time for us. And the topic which we have kept today is the impact of COVID-19 on Indian economy, because we all are global citizens, but I feel that charity begins from home. So I think it is important for us to first think that what measures we can take at a country level so that we can actually overcome this particular problem. And I pray to God that it should not be recurring enough. Otherwise, we can't imagine the kind of disaster it will actually bring to everyone, humanly, technically, industry-wise, economy-wise, all these aspects. So largely, there are three very simple questions that every common man is thinking, sir, which can be deliberated upon. And I'm sure you're going to bring your insights on these factors also. The very first question is, how long will it take to bring it under control? Because we are in lockdown since last almost more than 30 days now. And people are actually every day, there's a question and debate going on in media and various platforms that how we can actually overcome this particular situation. So largely every common man wants to know that how long it will take to control. And second could be how much GDP will be lost in the process. How much GDP will be lost in the process, maybe globally. And first we have to see from country-wise so that actually we can start making some preventive measures and curative actions to control it. And last but not the least is how much could be recovered when measures will be taken off. Because these are few of the questions which every common man today is thinking out of this, disaster. So I'm handing over the session to you, sir. But before that, I would like to just share with you the profile of participants who have joined us for this particular webinar. Largely, they are students, academicians from various universities across the country. We have industry experts and professionals also. And as Surat is family business hub, so I'm sure some of the students and the industry people and family business management background industrialists, third generation entrepreneurs and first generation founders, they may also be listening to all of us. So we'll take the questions at the end of the session with the permission of the chair. And please post your questions on Q&A format, which is being given on this particular portal. We'll take all the questions at the end of the session. So, sir, it's over to you now for your valuable remarks. And, we always feel proud as Oroites to listen to you. And your mentoring has actually added a lot of value to us. So as it will add value to the participants today also who are attending the webinar. It's over to you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you very much at the outset. And I think perhaps this is the first time Indus and Oro are combining together and doing some I may be wrong, but maybe first time. If it is so, I would like that cooperation to continue, because both of them have a lot of similarity in terms of their approach and thinking and other thing. I thank Vipin Agarwal for that brief introduction, as well as Daisy for providing such glorious introduction of myself. Rohit Singh ji for summing up. Practically he has done all the talk actually, in terms of enumerating various type of fields and other things. And Monica for taking initiative in this. If I recall correctly, she was the first person to say that we must have a panel, and then we must, and thank her very much for her initiative. Okay, I will split the talk. Very briefly, I will touch upon the global position vis-a-vis this pandemic, and then I will come to our Indian situation and what is the way forward. These are the three areas which we will focus. Very quickly, the global position is, you see, it is actually, it should be called a China virus or Wuhan virus. That's the first and foremost point. But somehow China has convinced the world that and call it as COVID-19 and Corona and other things. You see, wherever a thing has originated, and by now it's very, very clear, it has originated in Wuhan. There is no two opinion about it. Whether it came out of a lab or whether it came out due to this, what is called the wet animals, or that's a separate issue. But the originating place is Wuhan. And like, Ebola pertaining to a river, or if you remember, we used to call it as Japanese encephalitis, the pig problem, which affected Indians also. So the Spanish flu, like this, location-based names. So this is not something xenophobic or anti-China or anything. It's a Chinese virus, and it spread. There are 2-3 unsolved questions as of today. Maybe in the future it might be answers may be found. Why it did not spread to Shanghai and Peking? If you look at the map of China, Wuhan is located in the proximity of these two cities. Very interestingly, these two cities were not significantly affected at all. Naturally, you expect when Wuhan was affected, but it didn't happen. The second question is, when actually China knew, when did it tell WHO, and when the WHO announced it to the world? There is a lot of criticism that this whole thing was earlier hidden in terms of, China thought that they will try to locally solve it or whatever the reason. And WHO has also come about a significant amount of criticism, particularly in the context of WHO chief being appointed by China, pushed by China to that post. So he is considered as a sort of a pro-China man, be that as it may. Now, why did it spread it in Italy? Not many people may know. Wuhan and Milano has got a huge amount of business contacts. Wuhan actually is considered as a center for Italian fashion and Italian textiles, Italian leather, and all the industry. So the traffic between Wuhan and Italy is phenomenally high. So even after the outbreak of the virus, which was not fully announced, there is a significant amount of traffic going from Wuhan to Italy. So that is one of the major reasons why Italy got more affected compared to other zones of China even. So from Italy it spread to Spain, and it went into France, UK, and the most of the Europe. Surprisingly, Spain and Portugal are having common border. They are adjacent, and everybody actually think it's a single unity. Everybody talks of Spain, immediately Portugal comes into. But Portugal is not so much affected. So one of the reasons some scientists have told is Portugal is having compulsory BCG vaccination. Spain doesn't have. Spain is optional. Nobody takes their. So that could be one reason. So some of these will be analyzed, and later we come to know that what are the reasons for which this particular spread has taken place in various places. The first hit is the unity of Europe. Europe as a project, already Britain has left Europe, many people know about it, EU, and now it is a significant amount of problems being faced. Along with this, this COVID, the European Union is not able to exactly decide what should be the nature of the steps they should take in terms of allocation of resources, in terms of allocation of extra funds and other things. So that is one issue. Unfortunately, already G7 was having a crisis. If you go back to 1990, G7 had something like 52% of the global GDP share under a purchasing power parity. I don't want to bore you with too many numbers, but just this one number is important. G7 had 52% in 1990, and the emerging markets had something like 34%. The major emerging markets are India, China, Brazil, and Indonesia. These are the four countries. If you come to 2018, much before this COVID and other thing, G7 share has already fallen to 33%, while the emerging markets are more than 50%. So already there was a significant crisis in G7 before the coronavirus. IMF that time has forecast that G7 share could come as low as 25% by 2025. So the decline of G7 started much earlier than the arrival of the corona. So only this virus has accelerated the issues, problems of those 7 countries. Of that, Europe is the worst affected. One is this issue of this virus. Second is the issue of the illegal migrants who are waiting to enter into Europe. There is something like roughly, 1 million migrants are enthusiastically waiting to enter into Greece from various, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, Afghanistan, all the countries where there is some conflict or war or fighting is going on. And that is also significantly affecting the sentiments in Europe. Most of the European countries have closed their borders. Austria, Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, all of them are telling nothing doing. They are not going to have any one incremental immigrant. So this is going to create another significant amount of problem for Europe, because they are all in Turkey side of the border. That is Turkey and Greece, Turkey side of the border. And the Turkey president and the vice president sometimes talk about having, gaining Ottoman Empire back to Turkey, which means, completely half of Europe they should be having with them. So there is a multiplicity of crises facing the Europe. So as far as we can easily say, Europe is now an ICU, not due to Corona. Independent of Corona also, Europe is in very deep problems. And most of their, growth rate, anything is, many of them is negative. And most of them are not above zero or anything. And now, an additional issue is, there is a report suggests that China is trying to acquire some companies in some of these European countries. And there were also reports that China was interested in acquiring some low, yielding fruits in India also. And so there is a significant criticism about it. Some people say China is behaving like that old, puncture wala who sends his boy to spread the nails on the road. And many of the scooters and cars will be hit by the nail and become puncture. Then this fellow will go and say, I will put puncture for you. I will help you out of the situation. So this is how China is behaving after spreading. So Australia has practically banned it, any additional new investment from outside. Now Spain, Italy and France are formulating the appropriate measures to prevent, because China has got huge amount of funds, and of course significant amount of it will go into building its own infrastructure and network, which has been affected by the virus. But otherwise, some of those funds can. And I think some of you might have read, India has also taken some initial steps in order to prevent China from acquiring significant number of. Already China has got a huge amount of investment in India. Many people may not be knowing actually, 70% of our cell phones are from China. And a significant amount of several other products are also from China. And in the unicorn world or in the new startup world and other thing, they have got a phenomenal amount of investment. More than 50% of our, these new startups are all funded by Chinese groups. So one has to be watching this, and one has to take sort of adequate stuff. That's one side of the story. Second side of the story is equally interesting. Quite a number of companies want to quit China and come into other countries. And this has been openly advertised and announced. Japan has allocated actually $2 billion to facilitate companies leaving China. Somehow there is a fear factor, B, some sort of unwillingness to accept what Chinese have done. And the third may be, the worry of the virus and various other complications. They all want to. So from that point of view, India has got a huge opportunity in terms of looking at, if something like, as of now, it is suggested 300 companies or something is interested in moving out of China. So one of the location, obviously they will be thinking will be India, among various others. So what we can do in order to attract those companies and others. As far as we are concerned, in the immediate future, a couple of things is going to be recognized. One is the automobile industry, which was already in severe doldrums much before the start of the corona, is not going to be again same again. Let's be very clear about it. Automobile industry is more or less going to be significantly structurally altered. You can't expect, and it's not only in India, Europe as well as US and other things. Much of the travel is going to be tremendously altered, and even before the arrival of Corona, many companies have stopped buying cars actually. Many government departments also, they were all hiring from the outside car rental agencies and other things. And then Uber and Ola came, and carpooling and several other changes have come about. In Europe, many of the companies in the, many of the towns are not even allowing automobiles. They are only asking you to walk or go by cycle or something. Interior areas or inner towns. So automobile industry will have additional issues like electric cars and the cell-based, hydrogen cell-based cars and various other. So that industry is going to be significantly structurally altered. That I think I hope they are also realizing that it's not going to be the same game. Same thing about travel. Going to the drop of a hat, you are not going to jump into a plane and go from Delhi to Bombay or Bombay to Seoul and Seoul to Hong Kong. Nothing like that is going to. It will take a long time for people to be comfortable in global travel, because you do not know who is your neighbor, who is sitting, and there is a general question of fear. How long it will last is one doesn't know. It might last for a couple of months at least, definitely, in the sense of, in other words, high congregating places are going to be, and those businesses which cater to that, like hotel business for instance, it is also going to have a significant amount of impact. All this tourism, hotel, airlines, all these industries will have phenomenal amount of impact for the simple reason, howsoever you enthusiastically encourage people, it's not going to be easy for them to accept the current situation. Other thing, in India, service sector constitute roughly 2/3 of our economy. By service sector, you mean construction, wholesale trade, retail trade, hotels and restaurants, transportation, human as well as the goods transportation, and all other type of services like fitter, plumber, carpenter, and various services. In these, hotels and restaurant were the fastest growing in the last 10 years. They were growing around something like 10% real growth rate, particularly the small restaurants. We are not talking about Taj or Oberoi or anything. We are talking about very small restaurants, and significantly number of people going there, as well as reduction in the homemade food. Earlier, people, my grandma, if I remember, she used to cook 3 hot meals per day or something. Those days are gone. Now it's only 1 hot meal, and everything else is heated meal actually. My French colleague says that they have 3 hot meals per week only, and all other time it is either got from the, what you may loosely call the outside restaurant, or from the freezer they take and eat. So this has become the norm, and India also significant amount of development because of that thing. And then your Swiggy and Zomato and other came, and it further accentuated the whole thing. But now that is in a big mess. It's going to face a severe problem, because again, eating out is not going to be very fashionable immediately. For again, how long this will last is very difficult to tell, because we have a famous proverb I always say. We used to have this type of what one can call, when you go to a mashan, you take a vairagya, and you visit somebody is getting cremated, or then you think, what is life, what is all this, he made millions, but he still, he's just a pot of ash today, and is it all worth it? But that will last for a day or two only, not more than that. After that you come back, and then again you say, I'm the boss, and you know who I am, and all those things will start. It's what we call the mashan vairagya. In the old time, before the contraceptive came, it used to be, there is something called prasava vairagya. When a delivery takes place, the lady says, this is the last one. I am not going to have any more. Enough is enough. And at the end of it, you will find she having 8 or 9 children. So these type of, this you can call this as corona vairagya. How long it will last? Will people continue to, be concerned or worried? It's very difficult to predict. But one thing is sure, couple of months at least, this end of the year at least, many of these things will last. It's not going to be easily business as usual type of thing. So some of these industries will be deeply hurt. transport, in terms of travel and other. Any congregating place industry will have a significant amount of impact. Any type of business. Similarly, congregating places like, the Sunday congregating place like church and various other type of things already are having impact. Many of them are reducing their activities and other things. And another important thing is, this also provides us a great opportunity. India. Two areas I will immediately mention. One is, if you plan well, actually if you go to National Health Service in UK, you get admitted to an hospital. Finally, you find one Kerala nurse coming and serving you there. In New York, you go an Indian doctor, or again Chhattisgarh or Kerala, various places. These girls come and so I think we have to think very, very seriously. If we think properly on a national level, we can develop a huge number of what you may loosely call wellness centers in India. And in Europe as well as US, elderly is not taken care by the families anymore. They are all taken care only by the old age homes. They are all sent to old age homes, and we can create in our, we have something like 400 and odd hill stations. In all these places, we can create what one would loosely call wellness center. It's not just allopathy medicine or anything. It's much more in terms of a comprehensive yoga, various type of our own ancient thing, as well as so these wellness centers can become a very major attraction for the global elderly people, most important. And kindly note again, elderly in those countries are all in old age home. They can also be brought here, and we can provide actually at a reasonable cost. And our health service people all over the world can also be brought back at a higher price. They would be very much willing to come if you create an atmosphere. So one area is we can become global wellness center, and any large number of our the hotels are not going to be used immediately. So that is also available to us as an existing infrastructure. In terms of converting many of these hotels into wellness center is not a very difficult proposition at all. And I remember in the 70s, many hippies used to come to Goa, and then they used to smoke weed and spend time. Many of them might have become elderly now, so they can also be lured back that this is a place where you spent your youth in a wrong way. You come and spend it in the right way. And most of the elderly treatment abroad is less to do with medicine, more to do with in terms of love and affection, and then somebody being around, and that's how they started this Mother's Day. Most people may not even know about it. Mothers are all in old age home. At least once a year you should remember them, and that is the reason you are given a bouquet and you go to the old age home and give to mother and the bouquet, and mom, I am here, you are there, and we are happy type of thing. So there is a huge opportunity. It doesn't require any massive what one can call R&D investment or anything. It requires only significant amount of beds and the atmosphere and some sort of a garden, and so many wellness centers can be created. So because large number of people are now going to be worried about their wellness. It's not just return on investment, in terms of invest in equity market or debt market. Those things will continue to be there to some extent, but now people are also going to be thinking in terms of their and we have huge amount of potential and capability. For instance, I remember my grandma used to mix turmeric in milk and compulsorily ask us to drink in the night. We all will run away because anybody given by grandma is good for health, not for tongue. So we know that. So that's why and now some of you may be knowing, the same thing is sold in US as turmeric latte. It's something like $1.99 for a small cup. A large number of people are enthusiastically taking it. So there is a huge potential on that score for us becoming a global thing. Second is education. Rohitji was correctly telling it has got a lot of disruption, but it has also got a huge amount of advantage. Already in Europe, a large number of kids are in what is called homeschooling. In US also, homeschooling is very, very popular. And homeschooling doesn't mean they don't meet her. They have their own system of once in twice a week or thrice a week. These kids meet, participate in sports, and basically they learn from home. So many reasons are there. In US, the Bible Belt people feel that the evolution taught in school is not an appropriate thing, because they feel that is spoiling the mind of the kids. They feel that the original Bible way of evolution only should be. So that's one group of. In Europe, many others feel that schools are increasingly becoming violent place. Actually, the gun culture is increasing, and so whatever the reason, the IT-based remote training is becoming very, very popular. Whether our IT companies have earned a name all over the world as a good service provider. We may not be great in terms of hardware, but we are really good known for software. I think, and in India also now, many of the institutions are adopting, as of now in the lockdown period, of this remote education. Some of them feel that this is comfortable, and even their engineering and others can be taught, and the laboratories and other things can be outsourced. 4 or 5 colleges can put together, have one place where the students can go on. So it's not very difficult, provided of course we get a significant number of improvement in our delivery in terms of technology. The reason I am stressing this is domestically also, unless you have 100 acres of land or something today, you cannot think in terms of starting a university or a college or something. So many people I know in the various parts, including southern India, the real estate barons have become educationists. Those who have got huge land suddenly declare themselves to be educationists, and some of them declare themselves to be chancellor of their own university, and they give doctorate also to themselves by their own university, and then they are very proud. And this whole thing is very sad actually, and this nexus can be broken if we really go in for this long distance type of a education system. And obviously as long as the recruiters are clear that the kids are learning something, we should recruit from them. That's adequate actually. There is nothing else is more important. In the 90s, one SSV, he used to be from Hyderabad. He started certified financial analyst actually. He used to tell openly, he was the first one perhaps, we used to tell that we are not recognized by state government or central government. He used to put a board in his brick and mortar office. The board used to hang. We are not recognized by, when everyone was putting a board that we are under this so-and-so license number, so-and-so thing, he used to say nothing to it. Why should these be? And obviously he cannot issue a degree or a diploma. He was giving only a certificate. But quite a large number of companies used to go on. Unfortunately, he died relatively young. Many companies used to go and recruit. That is what finally matters for the kids. They are not interested in what are you recognized by your employer? Are you having future opportunities? I think this net-based education will create a huge change and revolution in the country's education space, if you want. So one is the health, other is the education. Third is, one of the worst sufferers in this whole thing is this MSME sector. Particularly a very small level of people who are, some of them depending even on their daily earnings. That's the way in which one method or one important thing can be done is significant amount of regulations pertaining to this MSME sector comes from the state government, not from the center actually. And this is also linked to attracting companies globally, attracting companies which want to relocate from China. What we can do is, I have been suggesting this to the government, keep all these MSME regulations in abeyance for 1 year. Completely. Why keep it in abeyance? If you abolish it, huge amount of protest will be there, because the major source of corruption income for government babus comes from these regulations. There are 23 or 24 regulations which are choking the MSMEs. I used to give a project to my student when I was, this project is very simple. Go and set up a small shop in Bangalore. 3 months project. You shouldn't cut any corner. You should go and set it up as per all regulation. All the students used to fail. Not in the course. I used to give them grade for the course. That is different. In setting up you can't set up. There are 22 regulations in setting up a small shop. And all regulations are just bribery. Let me be very blunt about it. There is nothing big deal about it. Whenever I am asked to sit in a committee to strengthen regulation, I get worried. That means the bribe will increase. There is nothing else is there. Food and Adulteration Act. One fellow will come and most of the small restaurant will put money into an envelope and give it to you. Then Shops and Establishment Act. One cabinet minister in the state told, we have to implement Shops and Establishment Act very sincerely. 100% of the shops in my state has to be closed. Very simple. It's simply not done. So like this, so many acts are there. I can go on listing them. All of them are revenue generating for, bribery generating for government employees. Nothing more or nothing less. All of them can be kept in abeyance. And this will also be one major way to attract global companies into India. We say ease of doing business. Ease of doing business is not in Delhi, Vigyan Bhavan. Discussion another thing. At the corporate level, Narasimha Rao did significant change when there was a crisis in 91. Some of you may remember we have to take our gold and then plug it in the London Bank and other things. But he was he was one of the great Prime Minister of the country. Unfortunately, not much recognized. In the sense, not much talked about another thing. You know what he did? Overnight, he abolished the licensing system. It was a shock actually. He abolished Controller of Capital Issues. Controller of Capital Issue from 1955 was the king of financial regulation. Everybody used to go and bow down before him, Huzur, and because he used to decide at what price the share can be sold in the market. Narasimha Rao told these are all stupid things. Why should government decide what price share should be sold? Let the market decide. He abolished all this. And some of the English language newspaper wrote a very bombastic editorial. Audacity, one paper wrote. If I remember, another paper wrote Timidity of Narasimha Rao. They told the whole country is going to collapse. Nothing happened. He was just smiling at the end of the week. Nothing happened. What happened was large number of these dalals and intermediaries who were operating in Delhi, buying license and selling it commission, and all of them became unemployed. That's all. Nothing. And it has come. It has come to a firm thing. Except 8 or 9 areas. But unfortunately, if he had continued for PM for a long time, I'm sure he would have looked at this also. Today, the ease of doing business lies with the state government and municipalities, not with the central government. And these state governments and municipalities has to look at what are the, and so keep all of what immediately the PM can convene a meeting of all the CMs and tell them, can we keep it in abeyance for 1 year? And that will give huge amount of boost to the global companies. They will feel comfortable because this is an area which is, which will drag on and on actually. And second is, combined with this is consistency in policy making. See, one government decided to exist the capital this happened in South in Andhra Pradesh. Another government comes and says that is not going to be the capital of our state. We will have capital in some other location. And similarly, one government says this factory will be started here. Next state government says no, that is all wrong. The land was allotted wrong here. So this is something no global company can set up a greenfield investment in India. If somebody is interested in setting up a shop in some place, Maharashtra, one film actress will go and hug a tree. She will say this tree cannot be touched. This tree is the most important tree in the country. And so, it's not easy. It's one thing to say that, bring all those. So immediately what government can do is constitute an inter-ministerial committee of several departments and empower some cabinet minister and have a discussion with the state CMs and whoever is interested, Not every state will agree to that because they know that the employee's remuneration comes from this only. The salary given by the state government is only for pocket money. Primarily, it is the bribe money which is, they are getting it. Some states may agree to that. Whichever state agrees to that, then it's fine. You go ahead and so this is also and MSMEs will phenomenally benefit out of this, because my estimate suggests, my book I have mentioned about it, India non-corporate informal, 20% of the turnover of most of the very, very small businesses goes in bribes. So, sometime or other we have to face this. And so if this goes, they will be extremely happy. The second thing to help MSME is ask the banks to keep all these Basel norms and other things in the cupboard. Just only 50% of the credit requirement of the country is met by commercial banks. All others are met by money lenders, small non-banking finance companies and others. Encourage banks to refinance all these fellows, left and right, and if required, print notes. And don't be obsessed about 3% fiscal deficit and other things. And that has never been followed by Europe also. That's supposed to be a WTO guideline. The Italy and Spain fudged their account and submitted to European Commission that they are following 3%. And later on, it was found out that they have fudged accounts. Fudging account is not only unique to Surat or India or anything. All over the world, people do this. So this 3% is not something which is God-given or something. We can have, according to me, my estimate suggests up to 7 to 8% deficit can happen. Nothing will happen. So provide adequate amount of financing to these MSMEs. And don't be so much obsessed about black money, domestic black money I'm talking about, because that is one of them which is facilitating the growth. The corruption money of the government employees, it comes as credit in the credit market actually. That is how the credit market is operated in the country. And all of them get around 4 to 6% per month. They pay interest. Many people say Kirana stores and Amazon should compete and other. They can compete provided they borrow at the same level. Kirana store borrows at 4% per month. Amazon borrows at 3% per annum. No comparison at all. So encourage in terms of, and don't be obsessed about this. For instance, one of my known person's friend, he had some 50,000 cash. Why and how, another thing, no need to allow. He went and wanted to give it for the Corona bonds. He was told only up to 10,000 he can give in cash. The remaining he has to give in check. Wow, his 50,000 is not a check or it's a black money. He wanted to get some punya by perhaps giving it to. So why are you having all this obsession now? Any person can go and deposit any amount of money. Don't ask him any questions. We are in a extraordinary emergency situation. We have a stupid type of a regulation that the moneylender can lend but not borrow money. Can you beat this? It's still there. If a butcher can borrow, a barber can borrow, a beautician can borrow, but not the moneylender. This is something, beautician, I recollect, that is another industry which is going to be significantly affected for some more time. Not many people are going to be enthusiastic in beautifying themselves. I used to think, almost in my part of the country, all the, northeastern girls decided to beautify southern girls. So they all came here and set up shops. All the beauty parlors are all run from people from Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, another place. Similarly, plumbers. I can't get a, Tamil or a Kannada plumber today. He is from Orissa. Similarly, the carpenter. But these self-employed people, I tell you, they would continue to flourish. Except this beautician and saloon business, all others are continue to flourish. There is absolutely, people are worried, they are all leaving and will the migrant labor come back? And they will come back. Where else they will? Because the towns are the attractive places where they earn reasonably good amount of money and funds and other. Okay, so government should not be obsessed about the fiscal deficit. Release funds as much as possible for refinancing by the banking system. Do not be obsessed about black money and other things, domestic. Okay. Other than attracting and removing all the regulation pertaining to MSME, two things government can do. One is seriously think in terms of the river linking project. It will be something like 25 lakh crore project. 20 to 200 lakh crore is our GDP. 10% of that. It will electrify the atmosphere. It will provide employment to at least 1 crore people across the country. There will be significant opposition, of course. We all know, how much opposition Kudangulam, that nuclear power plant faced, and how much Narmada faced. It will always be there. There will be issue of rehabilitation. There will be issue of protecting the trees, and that Norwegian girl may come and say, how dare you, and other thing. It's all right. We will start. This Three Gorges Dam, which replaced, actually, you won't believe, 10 million people, not nearly 1 crore people. This was implemented by China, actually. And of course, their government is different. And everybody knows it's dictatorial. Xi has declared himself lifelong president. I do not know whose life, his life, Chinese Communist Party life, or China's life. But the Three Gorges Dam changed the place of the entire northern and central portion of China over a period of time. So we can think in terms of river linking. It will provide huge employment, huge amount of what one can call, and it's a much labor intensive type of an activity only. And if it works well, it will change the face of the country. All the 9 sisters, what I call, incidentally, all our Indian rivers are named after women only. That's something very interesting. All the 9 sisters or sisters-in-law, whatever you call them, can be asked to be what one can call linked with each other. Only one river, that is Brahmaputra, is called male. All others are female in the country. Brahmaputra, because it's a naughty river, it's a very violent river. So that's why it goes by a male name. All others are lady rivers only. So for the time being, they can be asked to hold hand with each other. So this will be a huge project. Of course, Medha Patkar can be asked to come and inaugurate it also. That would be a very revolutionary thing which we can think of doing. That is one thing which, these are, what I want to say is, in a crisis type of current situation, we should think to come out of it in a big ticket items, what I call. That's what Narasimha Rao did, actually. That's the greatness of that man. The other one which I am thinking is, we have roughly 1 trillion. This is a conservative estimate of illicit money kept abroad in various tax havens and locations and other. $1 trillion US. So there are adequate methods by which one can try to get some portion of it. Philippines got some portion of it. Their own thing, Marcos money. Then Peru succeeded, and Nigeria succeeded. So there are a lot of examples are there who have succeeded. We may not succeed in 1 trillion. Even if we get something like 2 billion or 3 billion, that would be a good. So steps can be taken, and this is a sort of a time in which that can be announced that we are planning to retrieve our funds from abroad. No question of any ifs and buts. And the fund is not an issue. Again, let us be very clear. We have $460 billion US in the forex reserve. Out of that, at least 100, I am sure, billion is in all these treasury bills and other thing, earning 2.5%, 3% and other thing. So funds are not an issue. When Pokhran was burst by Vajpayee, Pokhran bomb, the entire world put a restriction on India. IMF and World Bank told we won't give you any money, and America put sanction and nothing. He floated global bonds through State Bank of India. He expected some 40-50 million US. You will be shocked. He got some 3 to 4 billion. So there is enough amount of resilience is there in our system. Funds are not a constraint. Let me again repeat. Global funds are looking at markets. Markets are not a search of funds. So if we provide adequate amount of assurance or thing that we will have consistent policy and you will not be harassed by these local laws and corruption. One more point important is US has amended their laws. Some of you may be knowing about it. If a US company bribes somebody in India, Nigeria or Philippines or anywhere, the CEO of the US company can be taken to task in US. It's not like, good old days. This was done around 4-5 years before. So many of the US companies, I think some of you might have read about Cognizant and L&T, these problems and other things. So it is not very easy for them, to come, Surat municipality says, you should have this 4 feet, set of a side wall. And if they want to say, no, 4 feet is not required, okay, it's all right, we will adjust it. And, adjust it means what? We will, some amount of money has to, that cannot be done by US companies. So it's a very important issue. So 2 potential areas is wellness centers and education through net. And 3 major sources which we have to look at is all MSME regulations keep in abeyance. Nothing. You do what you want to do. It's all right. They will be very happy, I'm telling you. Much but more than giving any extra funds or anything. The government is not going to come near us, will be a greatest happy news for them. Initially, of course, there will always be some hiccups. With the government also now, not that all the regulations are, you had a recent, I think last year in Surat, there was a fire in one of the complexes and other. If all the regulations were really followed, would that fire have taken place at all? No. So everybody knows many of these regulations are all just for on the book. With the last one simple illustration, I would like to. My American colleague, she has traveled all over the world actually. South America, Africa, everywhere. She always used to be fascinated. She used to tell me, Professor, the only country I find women worshipping trees is in India. On the road, she has seen in the road while she was taking a car or something. She finds some 4 or 5 women are standing next to a tree and then Aarti or some, that you might have also seen, I am sure, many places in India actually. She used to say that I have never ever seen anywhere in the world, a group of people worshipping trees, which you do. You do worship animal, that's a separate issue, but you are worshipping also trees. I used to tell her, we have gone one step ahead, madam, you come with me. I took her and there is a road in Bangalore, which is where the 3 people were doing the puja for the road. I was shocked and she was shocked and we asked, why are you? That is one contractor, one municipal councillor and employee, that is municipal employee. They were doing the puja. They told, sir, this road is Kamadhenu for us. Why? Because last 8 months, 10 times we have relayed this road. We have put the road and again we have put the road and due to this, this contractor daughter is studying medicine in New York and the corporator son is studying law in Yale. And so this road is a very, and that is what is the regulation in India is. Every road is a great Kamadhenu opportunity because you can lay it several times, not one time. And every time it can be claimed that it's a new road, right? And the road is same only. Nothing has changed in that road. It's a potholed road. So that is the example of a type of. So in Delhi, I was asked, how do we reach 5 trillion economy? I told simple solution. Take an Excel sheet in the computer. Type the names of all these Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Delhi, Bombay. Surat also now I will include. Corporation, all the corporator names, all the contractors' name, all the officials of the corporation name for the last 15 years. In the Excel sheet, column 1, column 2, column 3 of all these 6 municipalities, right? Not very difficult to get, I am sure, right? You will be able to procure and get it, right? After that, declare that all these people's assets are frozen. You have reached not 5 trillion, you have reached maybe 8 trillion or 9 trillion GDP. Unless and until we tackle this, let me repeat, black money is only a symptom. Corruption is the root cause of our problem. We must head on tackle it. Then only the ease of doing business is doing business in the least corrupt atmosphere by a very, very small people. They are not worried about, multinational corporation, because they all have huge amount of, Ambanis or Adanis, they have huge amount of lawyer network, chartered accountant network and other things. They can send their lawyers to fight the case. They will see. But very small people, pushcart people, or a small tea shop fellow, small type of textile showroom fellow, hundreds and millions of them, they don't have the ability to, counter the claims of the inspectors. So unless or until we clean it up, they will be in peace. We are an extraordinarily entrepreneurial country. Let's not have any doubt about it or any worry about it, right? The constraint on entrepreneurship comes from these regulatory framework. So keep it aside for 1 year. That is one of the major recommendation we would give. And don't be obsessed with small amount of this fellows and black money and other thing. No, this is not the time. The time for growth. And opportunity is available with us. I think we should completely take hold of it. Every crisis in India, I find the people are enormously cohesive, cooperative and helpful. Normal time we are chaotic. We don't follow any rules or regulations. But abnormal time we are very, very good and obedient. In Western countries it is the reverse. Normal time they are extremely, what one can call rule followers, and abnormal time they cannot think of. They cannot even manage actually. You would have seen, I am sure, in the videos and other things, people fighting for toilet papers, big war in the departmental stores, each eating others. But we are, one of my French colleagues was shocked. He sent me an email. He told, I see large number of these people from Delhi, migrant labor, getting into buses and going. He says in Paris they would have burned the buses first. He says your people are extraordinarily cooperative. I told, you see, the better off segment in India only behave worse off. The poorer and other segment are very, very law abiding because they are also God fearing. The better off segment is neither God fearing nor law fearing. But the lower segment, they are the fundamental strength of our economy. So we will always come out phenomenally successful out of every crisis because the average, poorer and others are extremely cooperative in our country. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. I think I have exceeded my time by some 5-10 minutes, right? Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I would now request Dr. Monica Suri to please take on the questions.
Thank you so much, sir, for explaining and articulating the financial health, not only of India, but across the nations. And I think largely most of the questions we have covered with respect to third world countries and economic growth, specifically with respect to agro-business sector, automobile sector, banking and financial insurance and everything. But there's one very interesting question, sir, which was actually posed by one of the faculty from Oro University only. So she wanted to know that how do you see this crisis in line to 2008 subprime crisis, which actually happened 12 years ago? So what similarities, what do you see that, how come they are similar in various aspects, and what are the differentiating aspects that you see were not there in 2008 subprime crisis and you see it further in this particular COVID-19 crisis? So can you just throw some light on this?
Well, these subprime crises are essentially a financial or a banking and stock market related crisis. But this COVID crisis is something transcending all that. As somebody, I think in the United Nations, or he told after the Second World War, this is a major crisis facing the entire, it's not just a financial crisis, it's a crisis of confidence, crisis of health, a crisis of society, hundreds of things are combined together. And, one simple example, in the subprime crisis, you wouldn't have seen the deer on the road and the tiger on the roads. All of them have come on the roads because the normal animals are all inside homes. So they are all feeling comfortable today. All these other animals, everywhere they were showing in the television. In Australia, some kangaroos are on the road. That is the thing. So subprime is much easier to tackle and a man-made crisis. This is also man-made, obviously, but this is something which is life-threatening. Subprime crisis, you don't have to be quarantined, right? No need for it to be lockdown and other thing ideas came at all. It was sorted out by the government spending more money and all that. But this is of a different, totally different dimension, I would say. Definitely.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. So there's another very interesting question, though we covered the wellness centers within your discussion only. So there's one question which is actually a prime concern for every industry today. Here, Mr. R. Ghosh, he has not written any association with the university or maybe industry. So I'm just taking him as one of the participants. His question is, health and wellness centers in India have huge shortage of skilled human resource. Then how government will handle these challenges? Similarly, many challenges are there in health facilities of rural areas. So all outreach activities in villages depends only upon some of the government schemes like ASHA, ANM. So he just want to know that how this system will collapse due to COVID-19 and how it will recover what we are talking in terms of health and well-being centers without efficient and sufficient human resource. So can you throw some light on this, sir? Yeah.
Wellness is something for which we have enormous amount of human resources actually. That is one area where, it's a plainly, we don't require any sophisticated technology or something. You require to have many more nursing schools all over the country, training institution for the frontline worker. It's not that all of them should be MBBS and gone to London and other things. Many of them are already we have some amount of infrastructure and again leave it to the private initiatives. And we have huge amount of wellness workers all over the Dubai country. And the way in which oil is going, it's going to be a major issue for them to sustain that. So we can, with attractive, pay packages, they would all be very much willing to come back and be in India. It's not required, you require huge investment for this. You require huge amount of training. And we have a large number of people in our country who would be willing to go for this as long as some productive employment is there. Even housewives can be part-time wellness workers. It's not required that they should be, 9 to 5 or something. They can spend 3 hours or 4 hours. Wellness is all-encompassing. I do not have adequate time to explain, but it's not just going and injecting somebody or anything. It is providing care. It is providing certain amount of consolation, comfort, teaching yoga, teaching alternate methods of, pranayam, teaching alternate methods of eating food, for instance. We have created a world where China, for instance, in many of the China, I know Chinese friends, they say anything which flies other than aeroplane, we will eat. Anything in the sea other than ships, we can eat. Anything on the land other than car and truck, we will. So this attitude will change now. It's not going to continue. Europe also followed the same type of thing. It is not going to, I am telling, it is not a sustainable thing now. A lot of people are going to have different view about what to eat, and whether you like it or not, it's going to be a huge impact. So this we can create. We have a human resource is not an issue in India. If at all we will talk about capital resources, we have so much amount of human resource.
Sir, there's another very interesting question I think that we all Indians should pose to us at this point in time as a social and global responsibility. So I'm glad that this question is coming here on the question board, like how we can deal with this problem at individual level and what should be our individual responsibility and commitment which will actually overcome the effect of COVID-19 for our country. So our individual contributions. What can we do at individual level to overcome this problem at national level? Yeah.
Oh, okay. First and foremost is individual level. You follow the government and other type of restriction. Very important. There is absolutely no way. Second is watch less amount of news and WhatsApp messages. Much of them is bogus, and don't go on believing it and forwarding it and other thing. That creates unnecessary tension. I forgot to mention, print media is also in ICU now. English print media particularly would depend 90% on advertisement only. Only hardly 10 to 12% is by subscription. Even that is now going away. And because of lack of leadership, many of this, I am not going to shed tears if the English print media is going to die, because you see all this ponderous center page article, nobody is reading anyhow, other than one who writes. And then he has to forward it to his friends and say, you please read it. And the editor also doesn't read nowadays. Only the fellow who composes in the computer will read it. So the print media. So don't believe huge amount of these rumors and other things. And follow the government instruction. Second. Third is avoid congregating places for the next perhaps 6 months. Any place, that's one reason why schools and colleges will have to go online sooner or later. Because that is one of the largest congregating places, whether one likes it or not. Particularly among very young children and other. Cinema halls, malls and other things. Last but not least is, this is my personal advice, is buy what you need, not out of your greed. So the consumption pattern should change. That is something which various places in Europe and US will also come. The consumption pattern, I mean, buy what you require. Buy what, not, just like that, I saw that, sir, I liked it, and don't do that. That's not required actually. So the different way of living, less is more. Less is more. And actually the Adam Smith, we will try to question. He told unlimited wants and limited resources. Let us make it as limited wants, unlimited resources. That's, alternate. And our Indian thing is always for those who denied it. The great Indians who are appreciated are not those who accumulated. That's only very recent one where we consider Ambani to be our God. No. In the very old past onwards, always people who renounced were the ones which were appreciated. In all type of faith and belief actually. Jesus, he renounced everything. He was not a richest man in his society. He was never considered for his riches. He was considered for his proximity to poor. Same thing, like even recent example of Gandhi, for instance. I'm not telling you all should go with loincloth to your campus or something. Not required. But, change your consumption pattern. And that's also part of your wellness actually. And be cautious what you eat. That's much, much more critical. That is some of the important thing which has come about. Yes. And follow the instructions given. Nothing wrong in, if government says don't go, don't go. There is absolutely no need to defy that and show that you are a hero or something. These are some of the things which we can easily do. Wash your hands and all this. Everybody is now accepting it. I'm sure even after this corona worry is over, some people at least will continue to wash their hands regularly. Because it would have become a habit. That's a very good thing only. Nothing wrong about it actually. And don't hug and shake hands with people for the time being at least.
Yes.
These are some of the individual level you can contribute.
Yes.
Right?
There's another very interesting question coming from one of the senior most professor from University of Jammu, Professor B.C. Sharma sir. He is writing that virtual classrooms teaching can't substitute classroom teaching, where there's a connect with the students and teachers. So what is your lookout on this? Like, how do you see online classroom teaching in comparison to the physical setup in the classroom?
It's a different type of world, but online doesn't automatically mean it is also possible that you meet once a week or twice a month or something. You meet for instance, online school, the local community can organize a regular meeting of the kids, those who are participating, so that they also feel that, that they play some games. And so it is initially at least online and offline will be together. As far as higher education is concerned, I think Sharma ji will agree. Sharma his name is, right?
B.C. Sharma. Professor B.C. Sharma.
Yeah. Sharma ji will agree. As far as higher education is concerned, there is not a significant amount of what one can call teacher-student interaction. Actually, I used to have, in our institution, something like 800 students. And once we were discussing about the student-teacher interaction. So one girl student told, sir, I do not know all the people in my own group. I was surprised. He told 800. How can I know? I knew some 10 or 15 doing project with me or something like that. So in higher education, let us not fool ourselves. We are not like that traditional Gurukul where individual attention is given. If something like that is required, some Veda Pathshala I want to do or some other type of thing, then obviously you have to do it offline. You have to have people around you, and then. But otherwise, much of this is, I used to have a class of 80. It was just delivering some, couple of faces I know, and then in the end I knew all the bottommost 1% and topmost 1% student. Bottommost 1% because they used to come to me for sir, 2 marks more, 5 marks more. I will re-look at my paper and other thing. Top 1% because they were known for not to bother me but generally getting some what you call gold medal. It was not gold actually. It is called gold medal anyhow. So that's only. So let us not fool ourselves that individual interaction will be lost and nothing much is so much. And listening, can it alone? In the old time our scriptures are all Shruti based only, not even in terms of memory or something. Even now, what happened? A set of PPT is only given to the student, and then one girl came and told me, sir, too many PPT should not be there. You give only one PPT. One PPT for the whole course, she wanted. Compressed. Everybody want condensed now, instant noodle, instant thing like that, instant finance, instant, So the course itself, one PPT is enough, she told me. I was amazed actually. I actually liked the attitude. So, very many people are not enormously enthusiastic about the type of learning what we thought or what we continue to think. No, they are not. And somebody told me, you put all your thing in audio only. I told why? Because sir, audio means when I am jogging or when I am doing my gym and other thing also, I can listen to your finance lectures. So the attitude is totally different. Sharmaji, don't worry, even in indirect, this net-based, we will try to have as much as possible in terms of what one can call closeness and collegiality and other, right?
Yes. There are two more questions. Largely, I think we have already covered in the discussion, but I feel that these two questions are the prime concern for a few of the participants here, which is being commonly seen in their content with what they have written. The question is, how do you think the operating cycle of manufacturing firms should be managed so that it should compensate the losses? So they would like to get some insights on this.
Particularly for MSME and other thing, the only way operating cycle can be tackled is opening up the bank vaults. Forget about Basel norm and other thing. Infuse as much cash as possible. Cash is the king now, the most important king. And the large corporation should be strictly allowed to follow the norm regarding payment to the MSMEs. This is there on the book, but unfortunately it is not really practiced. This is something which is very, very critical in order to. The banks can finance, refinance all type of requirements, both from the point of view of receivable, from the point of view of the small fellows, and the payable from the point of view of the big fellows. And the payable of the big fellows should be encouraged to follow the tight norms in terms of, and not holding on to the payable for a long period in terms of 6 months and 8 months and other. This is the only way in which you can, and profitability may not necessarily be immediately important. Immediately what is important is liquidity, cash in hand, and that should be enhanced and improved. And don't ask all questions where from it came and is it white or is it black. That's not the time to worry about it. The color of the cash is not very critical as of now, I would say. And associated with that, you can help some of these middle class. You can increase your tax level to 10 lakh or something. Similarly, senior citizen, you can exempt from tax for 15 lakh or whatever it is. Some sort of a these are steps which are very, very small, but which will give some amount of what you may loosely call boost, right? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, there are many students
Sorry.
who are attending the session, and I think one of the question has been posed by one of the representative of the students across the country, I must say, from Indus University. The question is, what will be the job opportunities in India after COVID-19? And in continuation, he has also asked, as a student of final year, waiting to take up job and enter the corporate world, should I be worried? And if yes, how much?
You should be worried, definitely. This year and next year, I think, is going to be a tough year. And this year, I am given to understand at least some companies, not all, some companies have postponed the job offer, which they have already given to the student. Some of them have not just postponed, they have just cancelled it also. So there is a huge amount of crisis. Let's be very frank about it. And I think it will take 6 months at least for educational institution to settle down. And they are talking in terms of June and May, June, and it will take 6 months at least for them to. In other words, the entire education is what we may loosely call postponed by 6 months in this year for the whole country. Earlier, it used to be for Telangana agitation in that state only, Hindi agitation in that state only, like that. Bengal had, but now the whole country is going to face a postponement of 6 months. This year and next year is definitely going to be. But let me add a but. If we succeed in attracting all those 300, at least 50 companies out of those 300 companies into India, which are relocating seriously, and then the situation will be different. It will give a huge amount of booster to the what one can call employment scene, particularly for the youngsters. I hope government takes some immediate and serious steps on that score. We shouldn't lose them, because Vietnam is interested, Philippines is interested, Bangladesh is interested. So many, we are not the only one. So many others are also in the queue to attract them, make their companies come to their location. But we should be definitely, and that will change the type of jobs you get will be totally different. You will not be able to get interesting jobs in, for instance, the hotel industry or tourism industry, or some of these areas will definitely be affected. No doubt about it, right? And or the what one can call automobile definitely will be affected. But think of wellness. Roll your sleeves and think of wellness. That will be a good opportunity. You can even set up your own wellness shop. If you have a location, small, you set it up. You will get good customers, I am telling you, from as far as Norway, Sweden, Belgium, Germany and others. Because you can offer it at a cost which they cannot even think of. And very old people, bring them here. And they may not, they may have a smattering of English. You hire a couple of people and you have all the refinery of wellness and start it. You will make a huge future, what one can call return on your investment. I can assure you on that.
Yes, sir. So, and do you think that in continuation to this particular action, a thought came to my mind, like, will you promote brain drain or brain gain at this point in time? So what will be most preferable for the country like India at this point in time? Yeah.
Brain drain, I don't think is going to happen on a large scale or anything. You see, we have too many brains actually. Some of them can drain. There is absolutely no problem on that. It's not some scarcity. We have 1.2 billion people. People always forget it. They think that we are not like Hungary or one of those small countries talking about lakhs and others, right? So we have brain drain. I don't think will happen significantly now. I'm very confident. If at all, it is going to be the reverse. Many people may want to return to India actually. They may want to be, because as it will be much better to be locked down inside your home rather than in some unknown place abroad in an apartment or a hostel or something, right? A lot of this maybe having a rethink of coming back actually.
Yes.
For which we should create appropriate atmosphere and opportunities.
Yes.
It's it's something, some of these are very, very difficult to predict actually. What will happen to large number of people in Germany, England, or even in USA actually. as far as I am concerned, some of my students at least are telling that they would like to come back. But again, as Corona Vairagya, how long it will, after 8 months, if I ask them, will they say the same thing? I don't know. Let's wait and see. Right?
Yes. So, last but not least question, we would like to know, do you think that economy recovery in India will be smoother and faster than that of many other advanced countries? So what
that is sure. You see, if you look at the recent, some of you might have seen that the forecast for the coming year and next year by the IMF and other, India is put as 1.9% for the coming year, and that is supposed to be one of the highest. That is the highest, because most others are negative or zero. And year after, that is 21-22, it is forecast something like 7.2 or something. So what I am telling is, this is it's like a test you conduct, and then the highest scored student is 34 marks, and so you have to give him one more mark and make him 35 or 40, right? So that is a type of situation. Kindly note, among all the countries in the world, we are relatively, I will stress the word, relatively less affected. So many are surprised actually. For a country of 1.2 billion, some are telling you are fudging data, and how long we can fudge data? We can fudge data perhaps for a 1 week or 2 weeks, because finally it will be, one shouldn't say that this will be reflected in dead bodies. You may fudge data, but what about all over the country bodies will be strewn around. So I don't believe the theory that we are not testing enough. That is another school of thought. All that is fine. Relatively, of course, even one Indian dying is a very tragic thing. If you ask me personally, it's not a desirable thing. But in terms of global, the way you look at it, the way some 15,000, 25,000 like that, and we are still. So we will recover much faster, and I would say we have already we are so enthusiastic. Half of the country wants to go on the road and do things as it is, right? And significant number of districts are not affected in India. Touchwood. That is another important thing. There's some statistics say as high as some nearly 300 districts are not, and some states have practically nothing. Goa is one example. Some couple of states are coming out of it. See, I think many people should realize that we are talking about unimaginable proportion of people, and that is how the global press is unwilling to believe actually. The global, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and they are all surprised actually. What is happening? One German group has recently told on prediction. Some other expert came and predicted, 1 million people will be, on the road. Nothing happened. We are still. So here, all of these are. See, these predictions and other things are all very. You should take it with, according to me, a pinch of salt. Good, I think near Surat there is lovely salt is available, right, on the seashore, where this Gandhi went and did that salt satyagraha also. So you accumulate a lot of it and keep it with you. So we are, I would say we are doing, and one thing, whatever said and done with all this opposition screaming, by and large, I would say the entire country has stood with the government. Yes. Including opposition parties. They have to make, obviously they have to make some noises. Otherwise there will not be, I wouldn't recommend that they keep quiet. But some of you may be knowing legal issues and other things. This whole lockdown doesn't have any legal backing.
Yes, sir.
You analyze it, you will find there is no legal backing at all for it. Emergency can only be for armed warfare and external war. After 1978 amendment, and disaster management, that regulation doesn't include this pandemic. We don't still have a pandemic laws, but still, convention basis, all the states are agreeing in the sense, and following. Nobody is questioning that under what law you have kept the lockdown. There is no law, right? We may have a pandemic law soon. I am very sure after this experience. For all the future, one doesn't know whether it may come back again from some other source or something. We may have, but one should, I think, we should appreciate our fellow citizens. We are almost all are fully, into it and cooperating. Here and there you will find some news always, some, such a big country, and the news fellows are only interested in the negative news. They are not, if they say that, all the trains reached safely, who is going to read their paper? They have to say which train got smashed, which plane did not land, and which house is burning. That's what. If the Times of India tomorrow says Ahmedabad edition, all people are all inside home and happily eating food, you will buy that paper? I don't think anyone will buy that paper. So the news fellows are interested in giving negative news. That only attracts people. It stimulates people to buy. So don't go. Listen, look at the size of our country. That's what I am always enormously, appreciating.
Yes, sir.
Huge portion of our country. A large state like Bihar is still not significantly affected.
True, sir.
It's a
True.
huge state actually, Bihar. Not many people are, looking at it. So some are, and some are of course due to travel, global travel. Some who attended some, function, religious ceremony at Delhi. All this, I am sure we will be able to overcome all this much faster and much better.
Yes, sir. So I think it's time for me to sum up the session and summarize what we all learned. And I'm sure all participants in their own capacities have got insights from you, sir. Whatever you discussed about the industry, policy making, and also academicians like us, I think there are many things to learn. And lastly, you just gave few points to us, takeaways to us from this particular session. One, you talked about the wellness centers, and I'm glad to share with you that Oro University has already started working on those lines. We have a Chelsea center in place, which is called Sri Aurobindo Integral Learning Center, and it is going to be very soon open for the city of Surat also, not only for city.
You can have some collaboration with our, what is that, Indus, right?
In fact, it will be open for all the globe academicians, researchers, industry people, whosoever would like to associate with us in future.
No, the reason I am talking about collaboration is it will, leverage on some strength, and so no duplicate. That way only. There is no other, what one can call vested interest or anything. That's all. Because both the universities in some way or other, yours more, of course.
Yes, sir. So glad that validated.
Benefit, I'm sure there will be some skill set there available, some benefit there available. You don't have to duplicate it. That's all. Right? And since both of you are private, you have some flexibility. Unlike a government.
We will leverage upon the strength of each other.
Correct. That's what I was correct. Right.
And, second point you stated on existing infrastructure, because we have strength in that. You said that we don't have any shortage of it, but we can use it as one of the strength factor to overcome this particular problem. And thirdly, the most important point which you raised is education through net. I think that is the core of this particular era. And we all are, taking some benefits out of it. And that's why we are hosting this webinar, and we are sitting here from various corners of the world and India. So I think employment also another aspect which you shared. So, sir, I think you have covered all the aspects with respect to Indian economy. And I'm sure if there are more questions from the side of audience, they should not get disappointed. And they can actually share with us through email, and we'll pass it on to sir. And finally, we'll get back to you with his recommendations and his insights on those particular questions.
And I wish all the youngsters, students particularly, who attended the session, all the best. One thing you should always cherish. See, when you grow old, you can tell your children and grandchildren, you knew what was this coronavirus. They will be shocked to hear about it actually. You can tell a lot of tales. You can even, construct your own imaginary situation. But basically you can tell, that we were all stuck completely inside home for a month. They won't believe. Is it really true, Papa? Then if you had got some pictures and other things, you can share it with them, and so you will have a most memorable time of your life as an youngster at when you grow old. So there are, you can always look at some positive aspects of this. And I am very well, in terms of wishing you all, my blessings to you all to get excellent jobs placement, if not this year and next year, or start your own entrepreneurship. And of course, all to my professional colleagues the teachers and other type of professional. All the best for the coming year for your.
And I'll not be justifying my role as a moderator if I'll not thank you people who were behind the organization of this particular webinar, and that's why we all were able to listen to you and got benefit from this particular webinar. So I would like to start with our Honorable Founder President, Sir, Shri H.P. Rama, Sir. Though he's in US, but I'm sure yesterday he was too concerned about the session and he was asking about the link, and I think his blessings have already reached to all of us, and we thank him that even being from here, he was a moral support for all Oro members, as he's always. Then we have our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Rajan Walukar, Sir. And I'm so thankful to Sir also for motivating and inspiring us to host this particular seminar. Our Honorable Dean, I would like to thank him heartily, Rohit Singh, Sir. Our Honorable Registrar, Sir, who's facilitated all the various behind the operations of this particular webinar, like IT team and Registrar Office. They also worked with us to make this webinar a great success. And then I would also like to thank our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Mathur, and CFO, Mr. Banker. And then I'll be equally thanking all our members and colleagues from Indus University, and naming them are Dr. Samir Gopalan, Dean and Head, Dr. R.K. Singh, Sir, Honorable Registrar, Indus University, Mr. Ram Sharma, Sir, Head Intake Studies, Mr. Amol, he is the Controller of Examination, Sir, and I would also like to thank our Controller of Examination from Oro University, Mr. Kumar Kaushik, Sir. And I'm so thankful to Dr. Daisy, who was there with me since last 48 hours and discussing how to make this webinar.
Of course, Bandari, I think, right? Bandari is one of the promoters of Indus, right?
Yeah, he's. Yes, sir.
Dr.
Yes.
Bandari also you can mention.
Yes.
I'm
So
sure
Dr.
you
Nagesh Bandari. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm so thankful to Dr. Vipin also for coordinating for this particular webinar, and the whole team of Oro University faculty from School of Business, our team of IT, Mr. Suraj Bhan, who was leading the IT team, and Mr. Abhijit Bhattacharya, who was leading the admissions team. So my heartful thanks to each one of you, and I'm sure this is not the end of the webinar for Oro University. We'll keep hosting these kind of webinars with eminent speakers like Professor Vaidyanathan, Sir, in future also. And if you want to know more about Oro University and programs, so I request you to please log on to Oro University website and then know about our programs. And if any collaborations and associations you're looking for, we are always open, to come forward and help the community and society at large. So with this, we are signing off from this webinar. Thank you all for being here and joining us for this webinar.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure having
Thank you, sir. Pleasure listening.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Daisy.
you.
And thank you, Monica ji. Right? Thanks you all. Right?
Thank you all.